This might be the coolest product to hit the LEGO community, at least in the last couple of years, if not ever. So let's take a look. All right guys, so as mentioned in the opening, this is by far one of the coolest products that we've seen hit our community in the last couple of years. I mean, outside of LED lighting and some other like cool motors that have come out, this has to be one of the coolest products that's not manufactured by LEGO that I've seen in a long time. So what is it? Well, if you're on Instagram, you may have been seeing some of these videos go viral lately of vehicles, boats, and even minifigures to a degree moving on their own. So how does it work? Well, we're gonna unpack all of that, and I'm gonna show you exactly how this thing works, who it's made by, and a lot more information. But first, like, just look at these videos. They are so cool. So after seeing those videos, you could probably notice that it's posted by GoBrick, and that's actually the manufacturer of this. It's out of Korea. I believe it's a relatively new company. I don't know a ton about the company, but what I do know is that they make this really cool product, and it comes in a few different forms and variations. Full disclosure, they did send this to us for free. The way that that happened was I literally just reached out to them. I was like, this is one of the coolest products I've seen in a long time. How does it work? Can you tell me more about it? We ended up talking, and they sent this over for us to kind of take a look at, to review. And as you guys know, we do get free stuff sent to us from time to time, and we tend to only review things that we actually like and that we actually would use. But this thing has changed my mind about possibly layouts for the city in the future. Might change how we do New York. I mean, we might have automated vehicles and boats. Like, I mean, how cool would that be? So let me show you guys how this thing works. But before I do, I just want to point out that the quality and the clutch power is almost equivalent to that of LEGO. I was really, really impressed with it. So I know that that's always a concern with some aftermarket stuff, but this is really, really well made. So I just want to put that out there before we dive in. Now, with that said, let's talk about the group and kind of what you get and what you find. So on their website, they have a bunch of different offerings, and you can get large sets, I guess you could call them, or you can get small ones. And the best part about these things is that you can actually customize them to fit your city layout or your track layout. And I'm gonna talk more on that in a moment. But what's cool is they have some different breakdowns on their website so that you can basically figure out what works best for you. They have some that are automated, like you guys saw in the opening of the video, and then they have some that are hand crank version, which we've played around with, but honestly, the automated version is really nice because you just turn it on with a button. It is battery powered, but they also do have a wired version if you want to avoid batteries. So what makes this so cool and so unique is, if you couldn't tell already, it's driven by batteries, okay? So underneath is a track system that is basically, it's very similar to like the Lego Links where you'd find it on like a Technic or the treads on certain vehicles. It's similar to that, where you basically put the links together to form this track, and the track sits inside of a guide, and you can kind of change the layout as you wish, just as you would with Lego roads. It is predetermined on the curves, but there's straight tracks and there's curves that you can kind of put together to form your own landscape for your city. So with that, you can kind of customize exactly where you want the track to run. And yes, it does work under the road plate system. However, the magnet strength is diminished a little bit. I'm gonna touch on that again in a moment. But what's really cool about this is, so when you open the box, right, you have a bunch of different stuff. And at first glance, it can be a little bit overwhelming. But as you dive in, you start to realize it's actually pretty easy to put together. And it comes with full instructions so you can figure out exactly what you want to do. But when you open the box, you find there's basically, it looks almost identical to like Duplo blocks or Duplo bricks. They even feel the same. And that is your base. You build the base out of these. And then underneath that is kind of their version of a base plate, which is basically like a Duplo base plate. But for the purpose of this video, we're just gonna talk about kind of the brick structure. So you build basically a wall of bricks around it. And then it has these little like they're basically like giant Technic connectors to connect the various areas together. And it all gets basically built on 32 by 32 studs, just as you would with base plates in a normal Lego city. So that's really cool because it kind of keeps it the same proportions as a normal build. So you build these squares essentially, and that's kind of the track components. And if you're doing the automated one, then you got to go 3 bricks high, or 3 of these bricks high, so that it actually encapsulates the motor. But if you're just doing the hand crank version, you can do it a lot lower, so you don't have to have such a bulky appearance. And underneath, is the base plate again, and then you lay the track down, and inside of the track you put the actual little tiny track pieces which connect to form kind of the conveyor belt or the magnetic parts. And so the way that this works is not all of them are magnetic. There's only certain ones that are magnetic. So you can actually set it where the spacing is however you wish. You just snap it apart and put it back together. And let's say that you have a build that's a little heavier, maybe like a semi truck or something, then you can put a lot of these together to form a stronger magnetic connection. And then on top you have basically a 1 brick thick, like a normal Lego brick thick top plate. And it's important to use these correctly because there are tracks underneath of them that line up with the track below, if that makes sense. So that can be a little challenging, especially if you're going for a custom layout, but we found the whole thing really easy to put together, honestly. The instructions were pretty easy to follow, and I feel like it's very easy to customize. So for those of you who are a little bit more into the customizations and making custom roads, I don't think you'd have a problem with it. I think where it might get challenging is if you have a really big city, you might have to do separate crank or separate motor areas, because I don't know if the conveyor belt will work for that big of a city. Like for example, if we wanted to motorize our entire city, I think you'd have to have multiple of these, because I don't think the track would go all the way around enough on just one motor. Now let's talk about the movement. The movement is really smooth for the smaller vehicles. The larger the vehicle and the heavier it is, it gets a little bit more challenging with the magnetic strength. I think they're working on coming out with some stronger magnets, but for us, like some of our vehicles are very detailed and they're a little bit heavier. So like the Amazon Prime truck, for example, it works pretty well. Every now and again, it'll get caught on something. And then like the police cruisers work pretty well as well, although they do tend to get caught here and there. And we were playing around with putting 2 magnets on the bottom, which kind of helps, but then what's weird is sometimes it'll just catch the back and then it'll cause it to like turn out of control. And that can be a problem. So we're still kind of figuring out the best route with the magnets and what works best. However, that being said, the smaller vehicles work really, really well. And some of the sets actually made by Lego, where it's, you know, very few parts, and it's kind of one of the cheaper sets where it's a lot lighter. Like if you compare, you know, ours versus a real Lego set, it works a little bit better just because it's a lot lighter. So, you know, when the stronger magnets do come out, I think that'll be a lot better. I also think the challenge with Lego vehicles in general is that it's a fixed axle, right? So the wheels don't turn. There are some builds where it does turn, but for the most part, it's fixed axles. So when it's going around a curve, you're kind of dragging the vehicle rather than it turning on its own. And I think that's why when you're using a smaller vehicle, it has a little bit quicker of a turn radius, and so therefore it goes around the turn a lot easier. And as you can see, the magnets basically, they pop on and off, and they just pop onto the bottom. Here's a video of the ATV driving around, right? So you can see it follows this kind of, call it figure 8 track, and well, it's more of like an oval track, I guess, and it kind of goes around. And then if I cut, you can see where the magnet, this is the magnet that would be attached to the bottom of it, where it tracks. And you know, it looks a lot like one of those, I forget the name offhand, but it's basically like the underside like dish part that goes on the bottom of a Lego vehicle. And it fits very well. I mean, the clutch power is fantastic. And so that is basically how you make the vehicles move. You attach these parts, and they come in a pack of different types. And they have some of these too, where it's like very thin but long to give you a little bit more magnetic power. And so you just basically have to kind of go through these and find which one works best for the vehicle that you're testing. And they have some guides that come with the box to kind of show you and walk you through that. But it's kind of trial and error a little bit to see what works best for the specific vehicle you're trying to do. But what's really cool about this is just, you're basically bringing your city to life, right? I mean, that's something that I think everybody wants to see. You have a lot of this in like the model train category, or like the model train hobby, right? Where people kind of activate their cities with movement. But Lego has always kind of been behind. We've always had Lego trains which move really well, and obviously have always been super popular. In the last few years, LEDs and movements for like Ferris wheels and amusement rides have come along. We've never really had a solution for vehicles. Like if you look at the model trains, or like they have that place in Germany, which is, it's like the world basically, and everything's motorized and automatic. Well, that would be really cool to see in the Lego world too, right? I mean, that'd be so cool if everything just drove around on its own. And I think this is a really good step towards that direction. I love how customizable and modular it is, because when you're pairing it up with modulars, or you're pairing it up with your city, or if you're building a city on top of it, not only does it act as a really strong base, because I mean, it is really strong, which is great to see, but it also just adds that extra level of movement to your city. And I think if you were to pair it with LEDs and pair it with train movement and a bunch of other movements and kind of really bring your city to life, it would be so cool. And I think, you know, after looking at this, I don't know if it's possible yet. We're still gonna test it and whatnot, but the area that we're now trying to do for New York, we might try and light it up, and we might try and kind of have this as a base to have the vehicles move. I think that would be super cool. I don't want to commit to that yet because there's still a lot of planning that needs to be involved, but it's something that we're definitely thinking about after playing around with these products. And it's definitely something, this is definitely something that we would buy. I mean, without a doubt, the quality is fantastic. The shipping was quick. It's super well packaged. Everything is branded, which is super cool. I mean, they did a great job. For a first iteration product, I was really, really impressed. And they ship it from Korea. But yeah, I mean, I think this has a lot of promise and a lot of potential. So if you're thinking about adding some movement to your city, definitely don't skip on this. I think you're gonna see a lot more of this in future builds, especially smaller cities where it's a lot easier to adapt and put this in place. Another idea was maybe just, you know, have this at the front of the city so that you have some movement in the front, and then in the back is just the standard streets. But you know, our brains are spinning with possibilities, and I think it's just a really, really cool product. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. Definitely go check these guys out. They're called Go Brick. I'm gonna link their handle for their Instagram down below and their website. And thanks to them for sending this over for our review. It's definitely one of the coolest products we've tested in a while. So that's it for today's video. Thank you for tuning in and watching, and we're excited for the future. We'll see you next time.